2 years ago, the Kansas City Chiefs made a trade that pretty much everyone disagreed with. They traded away Tyreek Hill. Since then, they've won back-to-back Super Bowls, and it doesn't feel so dumb anymore. Well, let's talk about the Tyreek Hill trade in hindsight, now that basically all the picks have, it was picks for 2022 and 2023, so now all those picks have been selected. We can kind of look at the entirety of the trade and just revisit it and see, how it worked for the Chiefs. First, if you look at the trade itself, so Tyreek Hill for a 2022 first, a 2022 second, a 2022 fourth, a 2023 fourth, and a 2023 sixth. So it was 5 total picks, although only 2 of them were day 1 or 2 picks, a first and a second, and the first was a later first round pick. That's also worth mentioning. So, okay, they got some value back, and they got a lot of picks, but it wasn't like they got the biggest haul we've ever seen. But again, sometimes it's less about the draft picks and more about how you use them. So, how did the Chiefs use them? We can start off talking about the 2022 first round pick, but they didn't actually select a player with the 2022 first round pick with that pick. Cole Strange of the Patriots was actually selected then. The Chiefs used that pick to trade up. And who did they get? This was their the overall trade, what it ended up being. So they got Trent McDuffie. So right off the bat, pretty big win. Anytime you trade away a player and with the first pick you get, you draft an all-pro with that pick, it ends up working out. Now, the Patriots had, they got 3 picks. One of those they traded away, which became Matt Corral. The other one, 2 were Cole Strange, who, I don't know, people projected to be a third-round pick, has looked like a third-round pick. That was kind of a weird reach by the Patriots. Also, Jack Jones, who, I put in an asterisk on the Jack Jones one just because that was actually the pick for Jack Jones that they gave away was one of the 4th-round picks that they got in the Tyreek Hill trade. So that's where one of the picks is gone. So 2 of the picks already off the board for the Chiefs, but they get Trent McDuffie, an All-Pro, who I thought was probably their most valuable player in the Super Bowl, not named Patrick Mahomes. He was great in that game. So yeah, that's how I feel about that. So okay, that was their first round pick. What about their second round pick? Well, once again, the Chiefs love to trade, so they didn't just draft someone with that pick. They traded. This was the trade. It was again with the Patriots where they trade back. They select Sky Moore, and they get pick 158, whereas the Patriots selected Tyquan Thornton. So they get Sky Moore, and they get pick 158. You might notice that I just wrote pick 158 there. That's because they also would trade that pick. They traded with Seattle to get Darian Kennard, and Seattle got Tyreek Smith and Tyreek Young. So that's the end of that kind of tree branch there. So, okay, that's all of that. So that was the first year. That was 2022. That's what they got. Those are the players they've had for both of these 2 Super Bowl runs. But what about their most recent picks they had? So these are the 2 picks they had in 2023. They had pick 122 and pick 178. Those are the selections. So, okay, well, what did they do with pick 122? You might not believe this. They traded it. Yes, yeah, another trade. Again, don't love to just draft the guys that or just stick where they're at. Which again is smart, right? There's no inherent value in staying put. If you can, move up or down to get the guy you want, probably what you should be doing. So that's smart football. How did the trade go down? Well, it went down pretty well. This was the full trade, the Rashee Rice trade, actually. So they ended up going up to get Rashee Rice. The Broncos got Marvin Mims, who's shown flashes for them. The Broncos also, the other picks that they gave up, John Gaines and Moro Ojamo, and then Keandre Coburn. I don't know if it's fully fair to say like they got Rashee Rice in the Tyreek Hill trade, because again, it was a 4th-round pick that was part of the trade up. But at the same time, we're including all of it, right? So, because again, it's also probably not fair to say they gave up Marvin Mims in the Tyreek Hill trade, but here we are. So, just putting it all together, that was what they did. And finally, they traded pick 178 for a 2024 4th rounder. So the trade tree isn't actually done yet. We can't fully revisit it because there still is one selection. That's right. Chiefs still will be getting another draft pick from the Tyreek Hill trade in this upcoming draft to get an extra 4th rounder from that due to kind of how that's gone down. So those are all of the key players. This is the list of what they got and what they gave up. So on the left, this is what they got. They got Trent McDuffie, again, all pro for them. Sky Moore hasn't really worked out. Darian Kennard hasn't really worked out. Rashee Rice has looked great for them. And then, Condre Coburn hasn't done a lot. They do have a 4th-round pick, and kind of a big aspect that has to be mentioned when we talk about this trade is $30 million in cap space. Because they don't have to pay Tyreek Hill, they're in a situation where they have that kind of money. So that's a huge aspect, as well as for the Dolphins, they have to pay Tyreek Hill, which they're glad to do, but that's just another aspect here. For the, what they gave up, what they could have had they not done any of these moves and drafted who ended up getting drafted. Again, it's a little bit unfair, right? Because Cole Strange was a pretty big reach. So, is it totally fair to say that, that's who they gave up? I don't know. But again, we're just going through it. Cole Strange, Matt Corral, Jack Jones, we should mention Jack Jones and Matt Corral not on their current teams, already. But, Tyquan Thornton, Tariq Smith, Derek Young, Marvin Mims, John Gaines II, and Moro Ojomo. So you look at that. Definitely feels like you'd rather have the Chiefs side of the coin than the other side, although obviously the Tyreek Hill getting thrown in there. I didn't put him on the list, but of course he's the other key factor. Then who would you rather have? It becomes a discussion. I think, in a vacuum, you would rather have Tyreek Hill than any, if you look at Trent McDuffie and Rashee Rice, which are kind of the two key pieces there for Tyreek Hill, everyone would rather have Tyreek Hill. Now, would you rather have Rashee Rice, Trent McDuffie, and $30 million or Tyreek Hill? Well, that's where things get interesting. And again, it's a long-term thing as well. It's a long-term play. They're going to have Rice and McDuffie for cheap for McDuffie for the next 2 years, and then Rice for the next 3 years. So, while they're in the middle of a Super Bowl window, they have that. So that's another aspect. Whereas again, Tyreek Hill getting paid $30 million. I think it's weird because I look at it and I still kind of feel like I'd rather have Tyreek Hill, which is maybe a weird take because the Chiefs have just won back-to-back Super Bowls, but maybe that's the wrong way of looking at it. Maybe simply looking at it and saying, well, I think the value of Tyreek Hill, and then, again, the Cole Strange thing kind of throws everything off because that wasn't great. Tyreek Hill, Marvin Mims, and a first rounder that was actually should have been drafted in the first round. Would I rather have that than, Rashee Rice, Trent McDuffie, and $30 million? Probably still, yeah. I certainly think, Miami wouldn't give up Tyreek Hill for what the Chiefs have, right? They would still much rather have Tyreek Hill. So I think in a vacuum for a specific team, I'd still rather have Hill. But the Chiefs are a different team. The Chiefs are different than every other team because they have the best asset in football with Patrick Mahomes. And maybe this trade wasn't brilliant because they got so much more value back, although I would still say they got pretty fair value for what they gave up, certainly. But, if we look at this and we say, for the Kansas City Chiefs, even if you don't believe that what they actually got was more valuable than what they gave up, I think what happened was they just created a much more complete team. They got Rashee Rice, who can still be a solid contributor for them. They're not completely dependent on one receiver they were when Tyreek Hill was there. And they got a guy like Trent McDuffie. And with the cap space, they were able to complete their roster and just be much more complete team. So even if they don't have the top end talent, they now have the depth, and they don't necessarily need an elite receiver as they've shown. So perhaps it's one where it's worked out. I think that where I stand on this is I still wouldn't have made a Tyreek Hill trade. Maybe that's a crazy thing to say after they've won back-to-back Super Bowls. I still think I wouldn't have made a Tyreek Hill trade. But if you're going to make the Tyreek Hill trade, they did everything right? I guess that's my main point, is I think that the reason why I wouldn't make a Tyreek Hill trade is because you basically have to be perfect, or you have to do a lot of things really right after the Tyreek Hill trade to make it worth it. But I think they did go on and do all those things really right to make it worth it. So it's worked out for them. I think they lowered their margin for error, but they were able to still succeed in that area. So, and whether it was a good idea or a bad idea, they did a great job with it and it worked out for them. So that's kind of how I view all of this. But yeah, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.